Have you ever walked into a room and felt invisible? Like no one takes you seriously, no matter how kind or well-intentioned you are. Respect isn't freely given, it's taken. And if you're constantly being overlooked, interrupted, or dismissed, this video will shake you awake. Because today, we're diving deep into the brutal strategies of Niccolò Machiavelli, the master of power, perception, and psychological dominance. Machiavelli believed that being good isn't enough. That if you don't understand how people really work, their fears, their instincts, their selfishness, you'll always be at their mercy. But when you master the game, when you flip the script, something incredible happens. People start listening. They stop questioning your worth. They start respecting you instantly. And it all begins with a mindset shift few dare to adopt. If you're tired of being ignored or underestimated, this is your turning point. Watch until the end to unlock 7 ruthless truths that can rebuild your presence from the inside out. And if you're serious about never being disrespected again, hit the like button, subscribe for more powerful insights, and let me know in the comments, what's one time you wish you'd stood up for yourself? Part 1. Who was Machiavelli really? When you hear the name Machiavelli, what comes to your mind? A master manipulator? A ruthless strategist? Someone who believed in lies, deception, and cruelty? That's the reputation, but it's far from the whole truth. Niccolò Machiavelli wasn't trying to create monsters, he was trying to reveal them. He didn't invent the dark side of power, he simply told the truth about it. And that truth? It made people uncomfortable. But it also made him timeless. Machiavelli lived during one of the most politically unstable periods in European history, Renaissance Florence. A time of constant betrayal, shifting loyalties, and brutal consequences for those who were naive. He worked closely with rulers, diplomats, soldiers, and watched firsthand as the idealists fell and the cold, calculated thinkers rose to power. What he saw disturbed him not because it was evil, but because it worked. And no one dared to admit it. In his famous book The Prince, Machiavelli outlined the reality of power. People are self-interested. They respond to strength more than to virtue. And if you act as though the world will reward you for being nice, loyal, or moral, you're setting yourself up to be used. He wasn't encouraging cruelty. He was warning us, if you don't understand the rules of the game, you'll lose, no matter how good your intentions are. This begs a deeper question: how many times in your life have you done the right thing only to be ignored, exploited, or dismissed? Have you ever wondered why being decent often feels like a disadvantage in this world? Why the loud, aggressive, or cunning seem to rise while the kind-hearted get left behind? Machiavelli challenges us to wake up. To stop pretending the world runs on fairness. He invites us to see things clearly, not through the lens of how things should be, but how they are. And once you learn to see power this way, you can start to control how others perceive you. Respect isn't a reward, it's a strategy. And like all strategies, it can be learned. Part 2. The illusion of kindness: why being nice doesn't work. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? Like no one hears you, no one truly sees you, no matter how polite, helpful, or kind you are. Most of us were raised to believe that kindness leads to respect. That if you treat people well, they'll treat you the same. But how many times has that turned out to be false? How many times has your kindness been mistaken for weakness? Machiavelli knew this truth centuries ago. He wrote that people admire kindness, but they obey strength. And there's a massive difference. If you're constantly trying to be liked, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace at all costs, people will sense that. And once they do, they'll push your boundaries, test your limits, and ignore your needs. Not because they're evil, but because they can. You see, kindness without strength is not kindness. It's passivity. And passivity is punished. In a Machiavellian world, and let's be honest, that's the world we live in, if you don't assert your value, no one else will. People don't respect what's easy to get. And if you're always available, always agreeable, always putting yourself last, you're teaching them that your time, your voice, your presence, are optional. That's the brutal part. But here's the empowering part: the moment you stop performing for approval and start setting standards for how you expect to be treated, the dynamic shifts. You stop chasing validation and start commanding attention, not by being aggressive, but by being solid, by standing firm in your self-worth. So ask yourself, is your kindness a reflection of inner strength or a mask for fear? Are you afraid of conflict, or are you clear about your boundaries? Because if you're not drawing a line, you're giving others a blank check to cross it. The truth is, you can be kind and respected, but never by accident. Only by design. Part 3, appear strong, even when you're not. What if I told you that most people don't actually care if you're strong, they just need to believe you are? That the appearance of confidence often matters more than the substance behind it? This is one of Machiavelli's most misunderstood lessons. He wasn't saying that lies are better than truth, he was saying that perception is power. And in a world where respect is based on how others see you, what you project becomes more important than what you feel. Let's get real, no one walks around reading your intentions. They read your posture, your tone, your presence. If you walk into a room unsure of yourself, speaking softly, avoiding eye contact, people will treat you accordingly. Not because they know who you are deep down, but because your signals told them you were optional. That's how fast judgment works. Seconds. And once someone has decided you're weak, it's very hard to change that narrative. But Machiavelli offered a solution: even if you're uncertain inside, never show it. Appear confident. Appear composed. Appear like someone who knows exactly what they want. Because the truth is, people don't challenge strength, they challenge hesitation. And if you hesitate in how you carry yourself, in how you speak, in how you set your boundaries, the world will hesitate to take you seriously. Does that mean you should fake everything? No. It means you should train yourself to act from conviction even when you're not feeling it yet. Because conviction creates gravity. It pulls people in. And respect often follows gravity, not morality. When you become the calmest person in the room, the most grounded, the one who doesn't over-explain or seek approval, people notice. They may not even know why, but they'll feel it. That's power. So here's the challenge: start paying attention to the way you enter a room. The way you respond to confrontation. The way you hold space when everyone else is rushing to speak. Machiavelli believed that power doesn't always come from domination. Sometimes, it comes from presence, from the silent message that says, "I don't need your validation. I already know who I am." Are you ready to carry yourself like that? Part 4, be feared, but not hated. Here's where things get uncomfortable and powerful. Machiavelli's most quoted, most controversial idea is this: it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. At first glance, this sounds cold, even cruel. Why would anyone want to be feared? Isn't fear the opposite of connection? But Machiavelli wasn't encouraging tyranny. He was clarifying the psychology of control. Fear doesn't mean abuse. It means boundaries enforced with certainty. It means people understand that crossing you has consequences. That your words aren't just suggestions, they're lines drawn in stone. And here's the truth: most people only respect what they fear losing. If your time, your energy, your approval are given too freely, they lose their value. But when you make it clear that your respect must be earned and that it can be lost, you shift the dynamic. Now, Machiavelli warned of something even more important: being feared without being hated. This is the art. Anyone can be a tyrant. Anyone can intimidate. But those who win in the long term, in leadership, in relationships, in life, are the ones who can command respect without breeding resentment. That's where self-control comes in. That's where strategy replaces ego. To be feared in the right way means people think twice before crossing you, not because you're dangerous, but because you're disciplined. Because you follow through. Because you don't bark, you act. And people admire that. Even if they don't always say it. They admire the person who doesn't play games. Who speaks once and means it. Who leads without begging to be followed. Think of someone in your life who fits this description. Someone who isn't necessarily loud, but when they speak, people listen. Someone who walks into a room and immediately commands attention, not through volume, but through presence. That's not magic. That's a cultivated aura. A practiced mastery of self-respect that trains others to mirror it back. So ask yourself, are you being too focused on being liked, at the cost of being respected? Because if people like you but don't take you seriously, does their affection even matter? Part 5. Master emotional detachment. What happens when someone insults you, challenges your authority, or ignores your boundaries? Do you react immediately? Get defensive? Try to explain yourself? If so, you've already lost control, not just of the situation, but of your image. And in Machiavelli's world, perception is power. The moment you show that your emotions control you, you signal that others can, too. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you don't let those feelings dictate your moves. It means stepping back mentally, especially when triggered, and asking, what result do I want from this moment? Most people never do that. They explode. They over-explain. They try to fix how others see them, and in doing so, they confirm their weakness. Machiavelli believed that great leaders, and powerful people in general, know how to separate what they feel from what they do. They don't act from emotion, they act from strategy. Why? Because people remember your reactions more than your intentions. If you panic, if you lash out, if you beg, you give others a blueprint for how to manipulate you again. But if you stay calm, measured, and silent when necessary, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability breeds respect. Why? Because it forces others to think twice. They don't know what you'll do next, and that makes them cautious. They begin to treat your presence with reverence. That's not coldness. That's control. And in a world that thrives on emotional bait, control is power. Next time someone tries to get under your skin, pause. Don't defend yourself. Don't explain. Just observe. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Or is my silence louder? Because sometimes, the strongest message you can send is not a reaction, it's restraint. In that moment, you stop playing their game, and start mastering your own. Who do you become when you no longer need to prove your value? Part 6. Set boundaries and enforce consequences. Respect isn't built on what you say, it's built on what you allow. You can say all the right things about self-worth, but if people repeatedly cross your lines without consequence, your words mean nothing. And here's the hard truth, people will only respect the limits you actually enforce. Machiavelli would tell you that power isn't about shouting, it's about clarity. Boundaries are the clearest form of self-respect. They tell others, this is who I am. This is what I tolerate. Cross this line, and there will be a price. But the mistake most people make? They set boundaries emotionally, then forget to follow through. They threaten, but don't act. They complain, but don't change. And the moment people realize your boundaries are just noise, they'll ignore them every time. Think about it, how many times have you allowed someone to disrespect you, thinking, I'll let it go just this once? And how often did that turn into every time? That's not mercy, that's a habit. And habits shape how others treat you. Enforcing a boundary doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it means walking away. Saying no and not explaining. Cutting off access. Changing the tone. The key isn't aggression, it's consistency. Once people learn that disrespect always leads to distance, they'll hesitate. That hesitation? That's the first sign of respect being born. You teach people how to treat you by what you accept. And if you accept everything, you'll be respected by no one. The world is watching how you handle small violations, not just the big ones. If you let the little things slide, they multiply. But when you address them early, calmly, and with confidence, you build a reputation, one of strength, clarity, and unshakable presence. So ask yourself, where in your life are your boundaries weak? And what would happen if you stopped being afraid of losing people, and started being afraid of losing yourself? Part 7, make them respect you without saying a word. Can you make someone respect you, without speaking a single word? Machiavelli would say yes. Because true influence isn't just in what you say, it's in what you signal. Every gesture, every pause, every moment of stillness sends a message. And the most powerful people in any room are usually the ones who speak the least, but are listened to the most. So how do they do it? They've mastered what Machiavelli hinted at, the ability to make others feel their presence. It's not about being loud. It's about being unshakable. When you walk slowly, you signal confidence. When you pause before speaking, you signal control. When you hold eye contact, without flinching, without fear, you tell the world, I'm not here to prove anything. I am the standard. This kind of presence isn't an accident. It's built through discipline. Through the daily decision to act from identity, not insecurity. You don't over-explain. You don't seek approval. You speak less, and when you do, it matters. You let silence work for you, instead of filling it with nervous chatter. You let people wonder what you're thinking, because mystery commands more attention than overexposure ever will. Think about the last time you met someone who didn't need to sell themselves. Who didn't try to impress, but still impressed you deeply. That's what Machiavelli called the appearance of virtue, not faking who you are, but embodying it so powerfully that people feel it without you saying a word. You don't need to argue for your value. You don't need to fight to be seen. When you move with inner authority, respect follows naturally. Not because others are kind, but because you leave them no other choice. So here's the question, are you showing up in silence like a storm, or like a shadow? Part 8, respect is a choice, yours to command. You've made it this far, which means something in you is waking up. You're beginning to realize that respect isn't a reward handed out to the nice, the loyal, or the overly generous. It's something you claim. Not through force, but through clarity. Through control. Through presence. Machiavelli's lessons are not about becoming cold or cruel. They're about becoming wise. About understanding that if you don't set the tone for how others treat you, the world will do it for you, and it won't be kind. The path to respect starts with one decision, to stop waiting for it, and start commanding it. So let me ask you again, how much longer will you play small? How many more times will you let silence replace your standards? You now have the tools, psychological, emotional, strategic, to shift how people see you. But knowledge is only potential. Action is what makes it real. If this video spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment with the moment that hit you the hardest. I want to hear from you. Smash the like button to push this message forward, and subscribe for more content that empowers your mind, your presence, and your potential. And remember, power is not about control over others, it's about control over yourself. Own that, and no one can take your respect again.